Thank you very much. Good evening to all our keynote speaker, the panelists, also our moderator, and our members and the other invitees. Today we are also conducting another webinar. Now we have been doing quite a number of webinars to keep both our members and also the corporate sector informed of the important matters that are happening here, both for the commercial world as well as for the society. Now today our topic or the theme is of great importance to all of us. It is finding a solution to a sustainable fuel bill for road transport sector. Now, I don't have to stress the importance of this because you will, if you look around, you can see what is happening. So the large queues that are there, both for the fuel and also for the gas that is there. And one of the major reasons for this, of course, is the non-availability of foreign exchange. Now, all of you will know that till recently, we have been enjoying all these benefits that are there in where the foreign exchange is available. We have had a few depreciations in the our currency, but today's situation is very grave. Prior to 1977, if you know that we have had a similar situation of non-availability of foreign exchange and also long queues. But there was one saving factor for them, you know. At that time, we used to get all our loan facilities from the development banks. That is the International Monetary Fund or IMF, the ADB, the World Bank. So these institutions have been were able to provide the funding for us. And when you look at it, any project that is there will need a thorough study. So that means they are all these international lending agencies have a lot of experts, and they really help in the they really help in making our projects feasible. But this time we have run into a very major problem because of the high loans or the debt debt is very unsustainable. That is, we are unable to hear. I think there is. They say there is some problem. I don't know what it is. Is there any problem on the sound or?
We can hear you.
Yeah, that's right. Some of them are saying that there is a problem on the sound. I don't know what it is. Right. Anyway, let's go ahead. So what I was saying is that today's situation is that the money that we earn, the foreign exchange that we earn has to be paid to repay these loans. So unfortunately, as a result, that we do not have any foreign exchange available to purchase the goods that we require for our purposes. Now, fuel is one of the major items that one would look at. If you look at the total import bill, I'm sure almost 25 to 30% of this bill is on the fuel that we are importing. So that is a very major component. And today, without the foreign exchange being available, almost maybe the majority goes for the fuel, because when we import the fuel and also with the rising prices, we have run into this problem. So I think all of you are quite aware of all these matters that are happening. Now, I was reading some of the central bank reports, and what they were telling, I just noted down a few maybe statements that were made in the central bank report. Now, one I will just read. Actually, first of all, I must tell you that Senior Professor Amal Kumarage is an expert in this transport sector. So he will be speaking on this, and also how how we can get a sustainable solution in the transport sector. Then today we have also invited two experts who have had long experience in the petroleum industry. We have Mr. Susanta Silva, who was a former managing director of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, where he will be able to tell us something about the problems that we are facing, how they have been able to tackle it. And also we have Mr. Piyasena Ekanayaka, who was a former deputy refinery manager. Now that if you look at the news, you find that that has been a major problem where they say that there is no uh, uh, fuel or not the fuel, the raw material that comes in order that they can work the refinery, which will give so many other products. So I will not speak on those details. I will tell you what was there in the central bank statement. Now, this is about the supply disruptions, supply disruptions stemming from issues in foreign currency liquidity. Now, everyone thinks that this is only a foreign currency problem, but that is not only a foreign currency problem. There are so many other management problems that are connected with it. The extent of these disruptions could have been reduced through timely and prudent decisions undertaken by CPC in a concerted manner with the CEB and other related public institutions. Now, of course, you have to bring in the private sector also, because the majority of the transport sector is in the hands of the private sector. So that I'm sure our speakers and panelists will touch on. But then the CEB is also using fuel. Now, today, some of them who are planning to log in, they say that they are having a power cut. They are unable to come because the fuel is not available. Then there is also another statement that I read. There is an urgent need for CPC to undertake concerted efforts to ensure the continuity of supply of petroleum products in a financially viable manner. Now, that's the other important thing, because we as management accountants are looking at this financial viability and the cost approach. Today, everyone is looking at the costing side because they find that this cost is something that they were not worried earlier, because the prices were either affordable or they were very cheap. So they did not have to think of the cost. But today, the prices have shot up 100%, 200%, 300%. Petroleum prices have gone up. As a result, all the other items have gone up. The depreciation of the currency from 200 went to now this almost 375. So we are, if it goes further, we will be in much more greater trouble. So we can see that there are many reasons for this, and that as a result, that the prices are going up. Now it is impossible to control the prices, because the price that you give today is not prevalent maybe tomorrow morning, or maybe in the evening. It is changing. And then pricing is there in every sector now. Even if you take the bread, there is a price control on that one. The pricing has to come in. So in our cost and management accounting, what we are saying is everyone must have their records, the cost records. Now, supposing if it is even for any manufacturer, they must maintain cost records, because that is the only way that you can work out the real cost of a product. In Sri Lanka, we have still not come to that. Now, if you take India, this cost account, maintaining cost records is made mandatory. So that is fine. So that's one area. But the other area, what I want to tell you is that we are talking of the foreign exchange, we are talking of long queues, but no one is talking of how our system is working. Now today, everyone is maybe talking only of the parliament. But do you know that there are 1.5 million public servants in this country? Then how many ministries are there? There are ministries, there are state ministries, So these are done at their own whims and fancies. No cost control. What is the cost? You see, if you have a ministry and a state ministry, you can see the additional cost there. Earlier, what did we have? We have a ministry and we have a deputy minister. One ministry, it is a much more coordinated approach. So the costs have been going up. So these are areas now we need to look. If we are going to build the economy of this country, then we need to ensure that these are looked in. Then look at the ministries. Now you have a power ministry, you have a transport ministry, then you have the industries ministry, then you have a trade ministry. Now, have you ever heard any ministry secretary talking or making a statement? Only one person made a statement, no? That is the secretary of the agricultural ministry. He was there for a long time. So many things happened. At the time that he was leaving, he made a statement that he was never consulted. These were not done by them. But you know, the implementing arm of any decision has to be the ministry. The ministry has to carry it out. You know, now if we want food production in this country, the agriculture ministry has to be involved. You see, agriculture ministry, they have the agricultural, the secretaries, they have their research organizations, they have their grassroots people. Then they are the people who must go. But you see, when you ask the farmers are protesting. They say none of these people came and helped them. So we now need to have see as to how this machinery can be put into force. It is similar, you know. Now, if you take the Ceylon Electricity Board, there must be they must be responsible. They must be accountable. That they are able to run the organization well, provide, give the correct pricing. Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, same thing. But today, what so many losses? No one is bothered, you know. But I must tell you that these losses are not only due to the inefficiencies of the organizations. It is due to certain pricing policies. You see, government is saying we want to subsidize certain items. We want to ensure that the pricing should not affect the consumer. Then in that case, who has to provide this additional cost? That's why I say cost and management accounting. We have formed what is called the Cost and Management Accounting Standards Board. We are a body incorporated by Act of Parliament. So we are responsible. Now, they must be, our bill was passed by the Parliament. Then we should be able to use our professional knowledge, our professional standards to put all these things into order. But everyone thinks if maybe some maybe minister or someone gives an order, that is has to be carried. That is totally incorrect. I think our public officers need to realize this. They should realize that they are the implementing agencies. They must do the right thing. They are accountable. They must say that if something is done wrong, then they must point that out. Otherwise, this country will go nowhere. So we need this, and that's why training and development is very essential. Those days, the civil service, we take the best people from the universities to the civil service. Today, what is happening? All the unemployed people are taken to the government service. Okay, that is okay. Then give them a training. Is that done? That is also not done. So unfortunately, we are really destroyed our own self. These people have destroyed ourselves. So now we have to rebuild Sri Lanka. If we are going to rebuild Sri Lanka, we have to do it in the proper way. We have to have professional management. Just look at Lee Kuan Yew. What did he do? He saw that his parliamentarians were qualified people. If a person how did he start? If a person puts a piece of paper on the road, he will fine. So we need to bring this discipline. What did he do? He wore white. Why did he wear white? To show that they are real, true people, honest people, with integrity. But we always wear white. But then do we have those qualities that are there? So I think I thought that I will tell you. I think our keynote speaker, Senior Professor Amal Kumarage is also here. But I think we need to understand this thing. It's no point crying, you know. We need to, today I open the paper, so many suggestions made by everyone. but we must have the people who can carry that out. We need the people who can implement that. Because I am talking with experience. Because I am not just talking to criticize anyone. I can tell you that in 91 to 93, as the chairman of the board of investment, I was the head of the BOI. I got the cooperation of everyone, and we launched the 200 garment factories program. You can never think, earlier we were doing only in the zones, but to go throughout the country. Today, this country must be thankful because of our 200 garment factories program, you are getting the foreign exchange to this country. That is the way that you have to work, because I was able to do it because I was someone from the private sector who went to the public sector and showed as to how this could be done. Today, we need public-private partnership. Government has no money, get the private sector, get their knowledge, get their experience and do it. That's how things have to happen. So I think today we are going to discuss a very important topic, but I just gave an opening remark as to what has to be done if this country has to be put in the right direction. Thank you, and over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much for your opening remarks and for giving the perfect introduction for this very important webinar today. Now let me invite our keynote speaker, Professor Amal Kumarage. Professor Amal is a senior professor of Department of Transport and Logistics Management of University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka. He is also the president of Sri Lanka Society of Transport and Logistics, vice president of Eastern Asia Society for Transport Studies, and the head of Department of Transport and Logistics Management of University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka. So, Professor Amal, it is my privilege to invite you now, sir, to make your keynote speech.
For example, we can't hear you.
Professor, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Right. Fine,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Are you seeing the presentation?
Yeah, fine, good.
Okay, then let me start. Thank you very much, Professor Vatavela and also Rushira for inviting me and for also revisiting this issue that we are in right now about the fuel crisis. Everywhere we go, that's what everybody's talking about. And of course, I want to talk about the same problem, but from a slightly different angle. A, from the point of view of transport, and B, from the point of view of the costing part, which is of special relevance to you. So I see this as not just a fuel crisis, but also the expression of a transport crisis that we have not solved. I also see this not only as a dollar crisis, but due to poor investment of past infrastructure, in particular, infrastructure that has not actually produced dollar incomes for us. I also see this not only as a rupee crisis, but of mismanagement of taxes and subsidies and so on, pretty much of government expenditure. So let me touch on all of those issues as I go along. And well, the problem at hand is how are we to deal with the current crisis? There are queues. So is this something we can live with? Obviously not. Should we go for rationing? But then there will be obviously issues of rationing, the black market and inequalities we have to deal with. Should we have a price increase? We already have, but even though we are one of the countries which have the lowest pump price among countries that are not producing oil, a price increase at this time may not be possible. then what are the other options that are there? Can we reduce the vehicle use, which takes up considerable amount of our fuel? Can we go for alternative fuels? Is that something that we can do in the short term? So these are like the constraints, the opportunities and constraints we have to actually sort this in the short to medium term. Where the country is concerned, I think many motorists will wait hours to get their tanks filled and then carry on regardlessly the same way they operated earlier until the tank is dry, and then stay on again another long period and carry on. This crisis is unlikely to go away very quickly, and so some adjustment on the side of the consumer is also necessary, along with government intervention in a planned manner. Just to set the setting for the discussion also, we know that of our energy bill, about 1/3 is for transport, and almost all of that comes from fossil fuel. And even globally, this is true, that 97% of the motorized mobility uses fossil fuel. So that is, in some way, the world is captive to the fossil fuel for its motorization. And as you know, the 20th century gave us this motorization, and it has also created one of the biggest impediments to the world, particularly from climate change and many other issues. So it has been a blessing as well as a problem going forward. So in the 21st century, the world is revisiting under the label of climate change. And as you know, many countries are looking towards carbon neutral economies by 2050 and so on. So I think we also need to be aware of the context in which we have to deal with the fuel crisis at hand. The global oil market, as you can see here, has been extremely vulnerable to international events. There have been many price shocks, and countries like Sri Lanka that are entirely dependent on the importation of oil and have very high motorization, increasingly now than before in previous years, bear a heavy shock. And I think Sri Lanka has not been wise to have a transport policy that will cushion us from this shock. And we also have not managed our forward purchases and so on, as many other countries have done to absorb part of the shock. And with the fact that we don't have dollars and we can't get credit, we are in one of the most vulnerable situations among all the countries in the world. And so again, the price of oil has now topped $120 a barrel. It has happened a couple of times before. And the last time it happened after the financial collapse of 2008-9, production went down, and then when they ramp up, there's always a price hike, and that stood for 4 years. And what we see now may very well go on for years, more than, I would say, months. So we are in it for a considerable period of time, and given the economic situation of the country as a whole, this is an added burden that is going to make any recovery of our economy exceedingly difficult unless we are smart about it. Now, the pricing of fuel is a sensitive matter, and we know that fuel should not be subsidized across the board, and many studies have shown that it is actually the non-poor consumers who actually benefit from fuel subsidies. So recently, after many years of abandoning global price benchmark fuel pricing, using it as a political tool more than an economic tool, finally we have almost reluctantly tied it somewhat to the global price. So we need to actually ensure that our policy of fuel taxation is sustainable. And as I said, we are globally one of the lowest priced countries when we don't produce our own oil. Out of all the countries, it's available in the internet of around 160 countries, the current pump price, we are about 50 lowest, and almost all the countries below that are oil producing, and many of them are oil exporting countries. Now, to give you a picture of the economic impact of this fuel, this is the analysis of our imports during 2014 to 18, the pre-pandemic years. And you can see that the petroleum products actually cost us $3.2 billion per year on average, whereas the cost of the other imports, including food and medicine and all of these put together, which are now restricted or in short supply, was actually about the same. But that was when the barrel of oil was around $50, $60. And today, as you know, it's marketing at 120. So actually now, the petroleum imports, if we were to consume the same amount, would be double of all other consumption expenditure. And this is a huge thing. So there is no way in my mind how we can go back to pre-pandemic or even 2021 consumption levels without it being a very heavy burden on our dollar outflows. As you know, our import cost is about 21 billion, and to spend 6 billion on fuel alone is not something that will be possible, especially when we have gone down to ground zero when it comes to foreign exchange reserves. Now, out of the fuel that we import, as you can see here, 63% on average goes for road transport, and the others are given here. And out of this 63%, you can see that actually the railway takes only 1%, and 63% actually is for road transport, and railway is 1%. So the balance is for different sectors that we will not talk about today. And we will talk about this almost 2/3 component of fuel. So can we continue to spend $4-5 billion for road transport oil per year? Now, this is in addition to the amount we spend for the import of vehicles. Now, about 8% of our total import bill is for road vehicles. And I said 10% is spent for fuel in them, but that's at $50 a barrel. Maybe if you continue to consume, that will be 20%. And when we have more and more vehicles, they need more and more fuel, and our roads get congested. We have to invest in new roads, in widening, and that takes another 3 to 4%. A lot of it is, again, dollar in outflows. So what are we talking about? We are talking about minimum of 20%, maybe even as high as 30% of our import bill being going for that. Even if you take our exports, we are taking about 1/3 of our export income just for transport. Now, one needs to sit and think, do we actually produce that much economic value for this particular input? Are there ways in which we can actually do with a lesser value? So if you actually look at different countries where I have compared the percentage of the GDP for fuel for the transport sector, you can see that many countries are less than 1%. And in our case, you can see it is one of the highest. Now, Singapore, you will ask why, but that's because they trade in it. They actually get oil for fueling aircraft and for the maritime sector, and they have made a business out of it. Now, we have a little bit of bunkering and aviation, but by and large, bulk of our fuel purchase for the transport is for domestic consumption. So we are way above many other countries, both in the region and even outside, in terms of how much we are spending for our fuel imports. Now, together with it, we also import vehicles. And you can see in the period 2014 to 2019, we have spent about 237 billion rupees. In that time, it's about $1.4 billion per year for the import of vehicles. Now, you can also see that out of this, about 50% are just for motor cars, right? And you can see that the rest of it is made out of actually the vehicles for the transport of goods, and the passenger vans are actually very, very small. It's less than 1/4 of the total cost. Now, one of the issues here is that these vehicles, even though they bring in revenue to the treasury, we have a huge leak in terms of the concessionary vehicle permits. In fact, we have been during this period issuing something like almost 10,000 concessionary vehicle permits. And the revenue that we have got from those is about 97 billion. And the revenue that we have lost is about almost the same amount. So almost like 100 billion rupees we have lost just by importing around 8,000-10,000 vehicles for a year in terms of. So we have actually encouraged the importation of heavy vehicles, in the sense of heavy vehicles, luxury vehicles, vehicles with larger engine capacities, because if you're importing a vehicle, it is more advantageous for you to bring a vehicle like that, because your saving is that much more. And as you know, that is used as a means of reward and various things. It's not a transparent scheme. It is not a part of good governance. And this is something I think we need to do away with, because it creates an anomaly in the transport pricings, and it robs the treasury of about 100 billion a year, 100 billion that could have been used for the public sector, for the public transport. The amount of investment for public transport for a year in Sri Lanka is much less than that. So we have lost, money coming from particularly high-end vehicles, and actually not developed our private transport, public transport. I will come to that later. Now, going back to our fuel efficiency, I have calculated the operating fleet, the vehicle kilometers, the fuel that this consumes, and then I just want to say that if you look at the fuel consumption, that 51% of the fuel used for passenger transport is consumed by four-wheel passenger vehicles. In other words, cars, SUVs, cabs, and so on. The buses and the railway, as you can see there, consume only 18%, even though they carry nearly 50% of the passengers. So you can see the private car that we use is actually, so you can see the percentage of trips that are made, and this shows the fuel efficiency, or more specifically, the dollars per 1,000 passenger kilometers. That is for one passenger to go 1,000 kilometers or 1,000 passengers to go 1 kilometer. The railway, you can see how much it costs, and the buses are slightly more. Two-wheelers are about 5 times more, and three-wheelers about 7 times more, and then the car compared to the railway is about 8 times more. It's about 8 times more. So the more we push people to private modes of transport, the less efficient we are in consuming oil, and our fuel bill goes up. So not only are we spending dollars importing vehicles, we are also spending dollars to import oil, and as I said, to loans to make roads, and we know all of that actually has brought about or contributed to this current economic crisis. So, well, that's a gloomy picture. So where do we go from here? So I believe that we have to look at the brighter side of things, find a silver lining, and we need to look at what we can do to be resilient, to bring back to normalcy. We can't live with queues. We can't declare holidays the way we are forced to. How can you bring to a near normalcy? How can we restore, but building back better without making, going the same path that actually led us to this? How can we actually build better foundations? And how can we use this crisis to bring about those changes where some of them were impossible because everybody thought, this was sustainable, it was fine. But now we have learned the hard way that, those things did not work for us. So, and of course, the long term, we have to go beyond just building back better, but to create new economic structures and new, environmental policies that will build a better society, a better future. And this is my hope that through this crisis, not only in transport, but across the country, economically, socially, we will make use of this to do this. And obviously, we need the correct leadership, both in the political, the administrative, and even professional, and also the ability for all these leaders to bring the country together in terms of going this path. So in terms of solutions, the short term, I have identified 3 targets. One is to restore mobility. We are now becoming increasingly mobile. We need to reduce the importation of fuel in the short term, and maybe even vehicles. And we need to actually reduce the waste of fuel that has been happening. And because it has been relatively cheap, people have actually not taken that seriously. And in the medium term, we need to create efficient transport systems that are not just fuel efficient, but they are cost efficient. And also we build on sustainability, that we are not vulnerable like the way we are when global prices increase or there are other supply shocks that disrupt us. We cannot build an entire transport network just on importation of oil. It's far too vulnerable. We need to have our own alternate mobility and energy sources. And then on the long term, I believe Sri Lanka has always aspired to regain its position as a regional or global logistics hub. And I think if we actually make our domestic transport efficient, particularly by getting digital transformation into this, this is to me the building block of actually connecting our country as a logistics hub, the whole of it, not just the port or an area adjacent to the port, as a logistic hub to the region. And we are still geographically well placed. And this is something that I believe for the 21st century, one of the few remaining economic thrust areas we can look at. So my view on how we can look at transport is fairly broad, and I will not talk about all of these. Particularly, I would talk mostly of the short term. So from a policy perspective, we need we need government to declare that, of moving people who are captive to private transport to at least part of the time use public transport. We need to try and move people from road to the more fuel efficient rail. We need to move people from motorized transport to non-motorized transport, particularly short distances. Short distance motor vehicles are very inefficient in fuel consumption. But these are distances we can easily walk or take a cycle. Many countries promote people to walk because of health concerns and to take cycles. We have lost the space, the safe space for walking and cycling on our roads, and basically given it over to more and more motor vehicles. So these are things that we need to seize the opportunity to bring back, because they are better for us with or without this crisis. Many countries are doing this anyway to build a cleaner, a better, more livable societies. We need to also look at doing things without traveling. COVID taught us how to do that kind of thing, and some of it may need to stay. Of course, they may have to be hybrid. We cannot do all of that, but the reduction of mobility is something that we will have to target in the future. We can also convert passenger trips to more fuel efficient delivery trips, where we use things like online platforms and so on, the digital technologies with us to do all of these things. So these are some of the things that we need to hear government say, this is how we are going to solve it. Some of these can be done overnight, some will take weeks, months, and some years, but we need this kind of strategic response to the issue at hand, not just somebody saying when the next shipload is coming and how the fuel is being distributed. Well, that's important, but then we need to go further. So the primary solution is actually to improve public transport. Sri Lanka's current public transport, including office transport and school transport, is just about 50%. For our population density, for example, in a city like Colombo, we need to up that to 70%. In Kandy, it should be around 60%. Higher the population density, the more economical efficient it is to have more people using public transport. But public transport needs a paradigm shift to guide people, and for government to say this is our desired mode of transport, rather than marginalizing it and treating it as the poor man's transport and looking down on it and allowing it to almost, just, die off. And that's what has happened over the last 4 or 5 decades. Without investment and so on, we have allowed it to ruin. And suddenly we have now to pay the price. So many motorists now say, I have to use public transport, but it's not available. It's crowded. It's not clean. Obviously, when we don't look after, when we don't hold our politicians accountable to invest in public transport, when we have not used it, when we have not allowed our children to use it, of course, we don't have a quality. So now we have to actually do these things in the short term. But people who have actually used public transport after many years of using only their cars tell me that the devil is not as black as they thought. It is still quite serviceable. Of course, we have not modernized it, we have not managed it, we have not made it passenger friendly, and these are things we've talked about it, but the government has just, consequent governments have considered it not an issue that they want to worry about. Well, this is an opportunity, and if we miss this time, the next time around will be that much more difficult, and even to get over in the long term for this time around without a substantial shift to public transport, we will find that journey that much more difficult. So this shows you the government capital and recurrent expenditure for the different modes of transport. So you can see that in 1996, the railway and the roads pretty much had the same level of expenditure, but the highways have gone up, particularly after expressways became very fashionable. And many people cheered, we must build more highways, and even now that is the desired option. So people have actually got government spend more on roads and less on railway, as we can see. And today we are asking, what happened to the railway? The bus transport, you can see, hardly got anything. In fact, the railway spending has now come down to the bus spending. But these are things that we now need to reverse, and the highway expenditure may need to come down, and the public transport may need to go up. We also have a number of other institutional challenges I have noted here. These are each of them serious issues. I will not go into that, but maybe if you want to, I can answer questions in that. So expressway building has to be, in my opinion, we have to go into some moratorium on that. And we just can't continue to borrow at very expensive interest rates and hope to come out of this. We have spent already about $8 billion on this, and this has added substantially to the overall debt that this country is carrying now. We need to think of instead modernizing, using technology, digitalization of the bus industry, as many countries have done, and to make them like you would see if you travel on a bus in Europe or Japan or wherever. It doesn't take much to get to that level, as it has been illustrated in this. And this is one of the things that can be done across the country in just a few years, even much faster than the building of one expressway or one LRT line or something like that. And in fact, the entire estimate for doing this modernization on all the 25,000 buses across the country was something like 300 or 400 million US dollars, the cost of 4 kilometers of the Central Expressway project that is being discussed at the present time. So there's in fact a pilot being done in Kandy with some World Bank financing, and I'm happy to say that it's actually almost in implementable state, and we are hoping that government will actually bring out these things that are prepared to actually plug this into services like park and ride and school services and office services, bringing in the best of technology that you can have on your phones today to convert these buses to 21st century quality. The Society of Transport and Logistics Sri Lanka has actually given the government a short-term action plan under 7 headings. So I will end my presentation with just taking you through that. You can read most of it. And our first point is that the government must provide leadership at this time. Fuel queues on the road for so long shows that there's no leadership. There's a breakdown of management of a crisis. One crisis has now snowballed into another. So we need to have a well laid out national program we have the technology. We need to communicate, how much fuel we can import, and then have a plan of prioritization within that and distribution of that. Why are we not going there? We need to prioritize the import of diesel, because that is more relevant to both the transport of goods and the transport of people. So people may have to shift from private vehicles to public transport and so on. So we need to have this prioritization. We need to actually show the seriousness, or the government needs to show the seriousness of investing public transport by actually in an interim budget showing that they mean business, by showing an allocation for modernization and reform. Otherwise, it's all like talk, as we have seen in almost all political manifestos before elections. We will improve public transport, but by the end of the tenure of that government, it has been worse than before. So we need a change in that. People need to be made aware of what's happening. People must be led to be part of the solution, not just for the government to take it as the only party to solve it. People have to make adjustments. People have to cut down on certain things, move to other forms of transport. Then also going on to how we can enhance public transport. We have suggested to double the Sisusaria school bus service. We have suggested to ensure that the first and last batch bus, which is mandatory for the successful running of a bus route, be enforced. We have suggested that the digitalized Sahasrara bus reforms be initiated on the major corridors in Colombo and Kandy, so that people who have been using cars can actually see their bus coming, see how it's loaded, and see how it connects with the railway. And what you see in many other countries when you go nowadays, it's available, implement it. Re-implement the bus priority lane. We have to wait till the diesel queues are out, but then these are things we have to do. Train services have to be increased. Their timeliness, their punctuality should be improved as far as possible. Investment into improving those are necessary. We need to also encourage particularly the private sector to develop digitally based what is called micro mobility, ride sharing, carpooling, park and ride, having bicycles for hire, with GPSs. There are many such solutions that are there for people to use. We also have some bitter medicine of reducing the use of cars, particularly four-wheel vehicles. And we feel the government should take the lead by removing the private vehicles assigned to government officers. Get ministries to limit the fuel purchases by at least 50% across, or maybe even more. And think of managing with less fuel. We feel that government must encourage households, companies, and so on to have travel plans and budgets so that they reduce that, and maybe even reward those who come up with fuel efficient methods, even improving the fuel efficiency of the vehicles we use. We may even have to impose restrictions on cars that carry just one person, maybe have a limit of 3 people entering specific areas in a city, where people just irrespective of the issue, they will get fuel even in the black markets and just continue to ride one person in very large vehicles. That kind of thing actually demotivates people. We need to reduce that. We may need to have at least a restriction for a short period of the use of private vehicles, maybe by the last digit on the number plate. We had that in the 1970s, I remember, on Sundays. even now, many countries, because of the global fuel issue, are restricting certain cities being used, roads being used by cars. They're having car-free Sundays. So our situation is much more. We need to lead people to that. We also want to encourage cycling and walking, adopt the International Car Free Day on the 22nd of September. About 1,000 cities plan this. These are important aspects of communication to the people to think differently. And cities that have done this have found cities getting revitalized. In fact, they want to have it monthly, some want to have it weekly, because it creates more business for the city, because cities become more livable. People want to spend more time in cities. At the moment now, we don't want to spend time in a city. We go do our business and get away. So these are actually good for business as well. Making travel more productive, compressing work weeks, which is happening now. We are also suggesting that a 2% surcharge on petrol or in the annual revenue licensing fee be and used as a dedicated fund for developing public transport infrastructure and services. Now, many countries do this kind of thing. So why not here? Because that is the answer to that. And for example, Germany has made public transport almost free. They're charging only 10% because they're happy to fund that, because it reduces the oil importation. As you know, Germany is in a big crisis because of the war, and this is how they have actually decided. Then we need to have a good transport sector pricing by integrating vehicle import taxes, fuel pricing, expressway tolls, parking charges, congestion pricing, public transport fares. Now, all of these are done by different agencies, and there is no real transport policy. And this actually has to change very quickly. And we need to have a plan to actually improve our fuel usage towards climate change. And then finally, we need to also think very deeply about technology transfer in our supply chain, particularly the agro supply chain. So there are lots of long-term and medium-term directions. I'll just leave it here. For the moment, there are many things to look at. I will not be going into that because of time. And we need to also bring in the private sector, and the government must try to do everything. We must use the forces that are there to actually get involved, create business opportunities, and present different alternatives and products to the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much for your thought-provoking and insightful presentation. It was heartening to see the options that you have given to reduce the transport fuel imports, and also to note that 2.5% of our GDP is spent on importing transport fuel. Thank you very much for giving us those statistics, Professor. Now, while the other two presentations are going on, Professor, if you really want, there are 6 questions that are asked from your presentation under the Q&A. So if you don't mind, you can answer those questions. If not, I will ask these questions from you during the Q&A session.
We will take it at the end, Ruchira, otherwise, so that once others are over, it will give a much more balanced view. Okay.
Okay. Sure. Now, let me move into another presentation. This time, the presenter would be Mr. Susanta Silva. He will speak on transparency in relation to both pricing and procurement process for the viability and sustainability of Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. He is the Group Chief Executive Officer of Prestige Automobile Group, and also he is a member of the Governing Council of the University of California, Chairman of the Audit Committee of the Council of University of California, Director, Board Member of the HDFC Bank since June 2020. Ms. Susanta, we would like to hear to your presentation.
I think the most important thing is a former Managing Director of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. I think that's the most important thing, Susanta.
Okay. So, Ms. Susanta, over to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Ruchira. It's a privilege for me to speak about this particular subject. So since the time is running out, so I'll try to get on with what I wanted to say. I think the professor covered quite a lot on the transportation side. And I thought I will share my experience, what I have got from CPC while I was working there. I was in fact recruited from UK in 2012, and I was able to do my job for 2 years and 8 months. And when I took over, the CPC was making huge losses, and it was around 310 billion. That was the loss carried forward. And in 2011 alone, it was 94 billion. And 2012, the year I took over, it was 97 billion. So it was really alarming. In fact, till I stepped into CPC, I didn't know that the CPC is in such a mess, I would say. But then I thought, no, it is better to take a challenge of this marvelous organization to put it right. And that is the very reason I decided to take over the job. And when I took over this particular organization, Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, and there's another organization called Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited. There are two organizations. The Storage Terminals Limited, the 1/3 is owned by LIOC, and 2/3 was owned by the Petroleum Corporation. And put together these two organizations, there were about 6,500 people. The first thing I did actually to do a skill audit of this staff of this two organizations, and to see whether how many people required to run this organization. Naturally, the costs come from the staff as well, and it is not only the staff salaries, but also the other overheads and expenditure. So when I looked at it actually, and I found that the staff is really overstaffed. And I decided to maximize the utilization of this staff or the workers. Then the second exercise I did was to evaluate the resources that are owned by this big corporate. And island-wide, there are fuel distribution storage facilities, and also the petrol stations belongs to CPC, and also petrol stations belongs to the various dealers. And then I would call it now onward, not I, it was we. I was able to put the senior managements put together, and then building a kind of a synergy among them and a teamwork, and bring them into a one objective, and to make the CPC running efficiently and productively. And I was in fact proud to say that we all became successful in the year 2013, and we were able to bring down the 2013 loss to 7.98 billion. So it was 90 billion around and came down to, we all did work together. That is what the important factor, 7.98. And 2014, believe me, we made a profit of 1.1 billion. Yeah, it is 1 billion profit. So, and at this time, the fuel price was really at a very high peak level, and a barrel was around 155, between 150, $155 at that time. So that is the highest oil prices that, in fact, now, currently the oil price is over $100 a barrel. Now it is really going upward. So I can see it's happening. And this is the big exercise that we did together. And then we wanted to use this particular resources maximum utilization. And one of the things that we did, maximize the utilization of the regional oil depots, the distribution centers, and also to transport oil to these centers, we used the railway transportations, because when you use the railway line, it carries about sometimes 13 to 14, 15 carriers, the tanks carrying fuel into those places. And then from there, the fuel distribution take place. So the economizing the prices cost of CPC was the main objective. But as of today, we can see the railway transportations have gone to very minimal, but private buses are being used to transport 13,200 liter capacity buses are being used to transport fuel to various depots in Anuradhapura, Nuwara, Kandy, and so on, things like Jaffna, so on, things like that. And naturally, the cost is going up. And we can see, as of today, the loss, so the CPC is incurring huge losses. In fact, as of today, the CPC, I mean, I don't have the statistics as of today, but I looked at the annual reports, 2019 annual report, which is published. In that, we have a minus equity of 293 billion. So the virtually the CPC in end of 2019, it was minus 293 billion. And end of 2019, they are in debt to the banks for borrowings 613 billion. I think as of today, it's almost close to 1,000 billion or 1 trillion. Now we can imagine the amount of interest that they have to pay on these borrowings. And on the other side, when the balance sheet is minus, then we can imagine what is the value of this, one of the biggest organization in Sri Lanka. And during the time that I was managing director of CPC, we were actually spending about $5 billion every year. But suddenly the oil prices came down. In fact, oil prices came down to $20 per barrel. And then the oil bill came down. Now, I'm really appreciating the fact that the professor spoke about it, sustainable oil bill. And it came down when it was around 2016-17. It was around $2.5 billion per year. Now it is rising up almost close to 4 billion now. Then the other action that I did, what I did was I in fact strategized together with my team, the going forward, how these corporations to be restructured and how these corporations can be profitable. And I got a big support from the then staff, even they are now. And we were able to implement those into CPC. Then the next point I just want to touch is the very important point is oil procurement, where the cost factor is which is contributing to the oil prices and to the losses or the profit of the organization, and part of it being transferred to the consumer at the moment. And when I was, when I was taking over this particular corporation, in fact, it was to my surprise, oil quotations were called using fax machines. And it is away from the national procurement guidelines. We removed all these fax machines and we implemented the national procurement guideline straight away. And when it was using fax lines, only 1 or 2 suppliers are coming for the bidding. But moment we remove that and publicize the the tendering process and applied the the procurement guideline, national procurement guideline. Then the suppliers, all the big suppliers came into bid, and we were able to get the best prices for oil. Now I can tell you comparison that day and then today. Now oil prices are containing two major factors. The first one is the contract price, which is if we are buying from Singapore, we call it Singapore flat. If you are buying from Middle East, then we call it Saudi Aramco. I mean Middle Eastern prices. If you are buying from the world trade, then it is going according to the world price index or the trade index, WTI. And that is the first part, which is not really deviating majorly among these markets. But the second factor is the premium. We call it premium, so the Singapore flat plus premium. And this premium is the factor that gives the final oil price in the international market. When we were handling this oil procurement matter, at that time, when that is between 2012 to 2015, when it was at the beginning, it was around $6-7, but we managed to bring down this premium to the even in some cases 50 cents of US dollar 50 cents. It is by just simply applying the procurement procedures. Now I heard again now that practices are slowly going away. And in certain cases, I don't want to mention the name, but certain cases regarding this certain funding or assistance given by various countries, nobody is looking at this premium. And in some cases, it is $12. Naturally, the oil cost is going up. Naturally, the liter that we sell is going up. Naturally, the CPC is making losses because it may be a funding assistance that we are getting, but the donor or the loan provider is taking the advantage of high premium and say they are giving us less oil compared to the competitive price bidding in the international market because they are charging us the high premium. Now, this is another factor. And then also, I, in fact, started looking at how do we maximize the cost or minimize the cost and maximize the benefit. So today we can see some bowsers are going from Kolonnawa or Muturajawala to Anuradhapura sheds. But we have a facility in Anuradhapura, so we can take the fuel to Anuradhapura by train, and from there we can distribute. So this is something that CPC is not currently looking at. Now, I would like to say why this is happening. Why this is happening? Now, this is really happening because of the fundamental reason is the people who are managing this place is not really keen. I'm not saying they are not qualified. They may be qualified, but they are not really handling as national importance. They are not even taking care of it as a national corporation. I will say like this now. Now, when CPC is importing the fuel and putting into the storage tank in Kolonnawa, which is managed by CPSTL, and that place is to send the fuel distribution properly, economically to the whole islands properly. But unfortunately, the fuel distribution is not happening like that. I was told, this is unconfirmed, this corruption even have gone up to the gantry level. Gantry is where the fuel is loaded to the bowser. Even those days, there were a few issues like that. when they wanted to get more oil, they tilt the or lose the air from the rear wheels, and they put to the gantry so that it load more fuel, and then they rob it. Yes, there were cases like that. But as of today, the number of deliveries, say for example, 200 deliveries for a day, and that is going to the favorite sheds, not to the people, not to the equal distribution. And some petrol stations get fuel, some are not. And the people are queuing in the queues. And I can share with the one of the experience that I had it this morning. Two of my sons were waiting in the fuel queue since Friday evening. And they were able to reach the tank or the pumping point this morning around 6:30. And they were told only 1,000 rupee fuel can be given. Now this shows how they are managing the fuel distribution. I think it is very, very important that this management of fuel, if I say like this, the two organizations has two chairmen, one managing director. There are almost more than 15 DGMs, but unfortunately, the 200 Bowser loads cannot be delivered by these two organizations. And I heard about 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting by the Honorable Minister, and he was really got angry that this fuel has not been properly distributed. And he asked his personal assistants to go and sit near the gantry to see whether the fuel are being properly distributed. Now you can imagine the so-called high-level management, whether they are really doing their job. Now this has created a lot of anxiety among the people, and they are not getting their fuel. So if we really, now why is this happening? This is the real breakdown of the system. Now I said I was recruited from UK, but when the 2015 election is over, the entire board was dissolved. We have to go away from that. Now all the systems and procedures we put together with the staff, strategic plan that we were trying to launch, now minimizing or eliminate the losses, all went for haywire because they wanted to remove the existing management and then put the people they wish to put in. Now, this is the fundamental mistake that I believe, not only in CPC, it is happening to every organization. This is the inefficiencies and really very low productivity in that organization. Some of these people have been appointed by the politics. They are really care of their own business, and they are not care about this public assets. So this need to be taken very seriously by the government. In fact, in the history, when we were studying, when we were in the universities, the corporation is an identical business unit managed by the professionals or the qualified people who really take over or did.
Susanta, 2 minutes more. Huh? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, sir. And that in that respect, if we really concentrate on these institutions are being managed, non-politicized people, I think all these public assets will give very good return that will minimize the cost of operation, that will save dollars, and we will have dollars to import more oil. And as Professor said, there are so many other factors that we need to take into account. And I'm sure we cannot finish within 15-20 minutes of this speech, because there are so many things this country need to revisit, relook at. We may have to rework on them. And thank you very much. I'll stop my discussions at this point, leaving if there is any question to be answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susanta. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences at CPC and also for explaining the importance of transparency when it comes to pricing and procurement to have viability and sustainability at CPC. So now I would like to move it to our next presenter, Mr. PSN Ekanayaka, who's the former deputy refinery manager at CPC. Mr. PSN Ekanayaka has obtained his BSc in chemical engineering from University of Moratuwa in 1978. He's a chartered engineer and he is also a member of the Institute of Engineers of Sri Lanka. As I have told you, he is the former deputy refinery manager, operations and manufacturing at CPC. Mr. PSN Ekanayaka, we would like to hear from you the cost effectiveness, how we can have cost effectiveness of CPC refinery operation and how it can contribute to the economy. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ruchira. I'll take a presentation screen share. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we
Hello.
can hear you, Mr.
Right.
PSN. I think you can, if you can make the screen little larger.
Okay,
right.
right.
I did
Oh,
now.
Uh, Then I can't see my screen.
We can see your screen, Mr. PSN. If you can put it
Yeah.
presentation mode.
Presentation mode. So that's what I'm trying to. It's covered.
Yeah, it is on top, on the orange area, on top.
Slide
Yeah,
show.
you can move a little up. There is a presentation mode. Not on the main menu. On the you can see there is a saving button and on top of file, and then home, and then insert. On top of that, there is a point where you can click. Go up, please. No, not there.
Yeah.
Insert.
No.
Or else, Mr. PSN, if you can move down the keyboard, that is enough. The presentation mode is there at the bottom as well. But then, of course, if you can move the slides from the keyboard, that is okay. We can see the slides.
Okay, I'll try to. Yes. Okay, it's all right. I'll.
No, there is a point called slideshow. You go on the
That
menu.
is right.
So yeah, animation and then next slideshow. On top, on the orange bar.
Orange bar.
Little above to where you are.
Little above. Home, insert, draw, design.
Now, can you help me? Huh? Right. Okay, now. No?
That's right. Okay. Now it's
Right.
okay.
Okay. Sorry. I got help from my son-in-law. So my presentation actually I rushed through the main preliminary things and coming to the main points quickly. And actually the main issues regarding this petroleum sector is non-availability and high prices. So what are the solution? What are the solution for this? We know that the main issue is lack of foreign currency. Then until sort out that problems, what are the things that we can do to at least get some relief during this stage? That is what I am mainly concerned in my presentation. One thing is I would reduce consumption. So, transport sector, actually this one Professor Kumarage explained very well. Efficient passenger transport system, efficient good transport system, and also power sector. We know that very large amount of fuel, petroleum fuel is used in the power sector. And apart from the main power plants, as you know, Urea now these days operate small generators. That generators consume actually very high fuel or very low efficiency. So you must look into that matter also, because it's a unwanted expenditure at this stage. Then other thing is maximize local production. So in this slides, you can see petroleum consumption. But petroleum consumption, of course, especially gasoline and diesel consumption has increased very sharply during the last 2 decades, especially after 2015. The consumption has tremendously increased due to, I think, the prices of very low compared to the previous prices, especially the world market prices has came down very sharply during that period from 2015 to 2019. Actually, that when you calculate, that is about almost it reduced down to about half of the previous prices. During the 2010 to the 2015 periods, the prices of petroleum crude oil was about $110 per barrel, but from 2015 down to 2019, it came down to half of that. During that period, of course, that is the main stage that government would have taken very good initiative, because as Mr. Sushant Pera explained, during the 2010 to 2015 period, oil import bill was around $6,000 million, but from 2015 down to 2019, it came down to about half of that. So for 5 years periods, of course, if you manage properly, you saved about $3,000 million. For 5 years, it's about $15,000 US. So you can imagine if that money was managed properly, how would be the Sri Lanka by now? Because $15,000 million is huge amount. You would have get rid of all these issues with that saving alone. So fuel consumption also has gone up tremendously. So actually, the refinery, mainly I will concern on the refinery. Refinery expansion was in the agenda for last 20 years, but very little approach was taken by each government to develop this refinery. Presently, the refinery capacity, design capacity is only about 50,000 barrels per day, whereas our country demand is about 100,000 barrels per day right now. So with our proposals to expand the refinery and modernize the systems to produce petroleum requirement locally, instead of importing high price refined products. Presently, actually the refinery operation is highly restricted due to the various reasons, especially product quality wise. But if you develop the refinery to a status like other countries, you can bring down the petrol import bills substantially. Then petrol prices and crack margin, that crack margin that price difference between the crude oil and products during present days, this is very highly different from the normal patterns of the crude oil and products. Here you can see petroleum prices. Brent crude price is for during the last month is somewhere around 110, 115, whereas product prices, gasoline, petrol 92, 95, ADO, auto diesel oil, and other products, the margin is very high compared to the earlier margins. We have never got margin like this. Now it's about $30 to $40 difference, whereas previous margin was around $10 to $15 maximum. So that is why this stage, it is very important to operate existing refinery even at the low throughput, because we are getting very high margin. Otherwise, we have to pay this amount to import refined petroleum products. Actually, when you calculate the amount of foreign exchange loss, even if you operate the present refinery at the operating capacity, you can save about $1 to $1.5 million per day if you are correctly operate this refinery. And that means $1.5 million means it's almost similar to the, or more than the total LPG. So you can just imagine that you can get LPG just like freely if you operate refinery at this stage. That is the importance of the operating refinery at this stage. And other things, Mr. Sushant explained very well, the issues related to the distribution. We have very good infrastructure facilities island-wide to distribute petroleum products through railway and instead of distributing using lot of transport fuel that I think you have seen, as Mr. Satapera explained, the fuel transport from Colombo to Baticolo, then by CPC, then LIOC transport fuel from Trincomalee to Colombo. So you can imagine what is the wastage of actually transport fuel for you for this transport of petroleum products. the other thing is at this stage, very crucial stage, because you can do some modification, alteration to the product specification to ease up the present crisis, like you know, if you give some relaxation to the petroleum fuel quality, especially for three-wheelers and two-wheelers, you can produce more petrol and diesel and save a lot of money out of this, because three-wheelers and two-wheelers, you need to have very high quality, especially the octane number, very high octane number. You can operate with low octane number. So thereby you can reduce the cost for importing high octane number gasoline. Similarly, if you can produce from the existing refinery, you can cater for the power plant operation, even with a little low quality, and import good quality products for good vehicles.
Mr. PSI, 2 minutes more, okay?
Right, okay. So that is why this specification, product specification, you can change according to the requirement, gasoline and diesel. And finally, the other thing is, I think everybody knows that we have very good resource of natural gas. Natural gas, you can, we have been discussing this matter for last two decades or more, but still it is in the agenda only. So that is the area that we need to harness, and even at this stage, to expedite the things and get something out of this, because we have good resources there. Estimated volume is about 1 trillion cubic feet, about almost 20 million metric tons. That is sufficient for about, at the current rate of consumption, about 20 to 30 years. With that, I'll conclude my presentation. We can get more information, clarification during the discussion period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. PSI. Thank you for sharing these details about CPC and also for explaining how it can be cost effective and how it can contribute to the economy. So, Professor, I can see there are so many questions and also there are so many suggestions under both Q&A and also on the chat. So, given the time now, it's now 10 minutes past 8.
Yeah. We can go up to 8:30, so we'll take it up quickly. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take up the questions quickly. So starting with, I'll start from the questions that are there under the Q&A. So this first question, I think Professor Amal Kumarage can answer. The questioner is asking, basically, he's comparing the revenue as well as expenditure of railway. And he is saying 60% of expenditure is related to personal cost. How can we make railway profitable and efficient?
Yeah, well, the railway pricing is controlled by the government. It is not a commercial agency where you can evaluate its performance on a P&L. This narrative that the railway is loss-making, public transport is loss-making, is something that has actually created a sense of public transport being the problem. And actually, if you look at, as I said, the railways lost, let's say, 15 billion. How much did I say was the loss due to concessionary vehicle permits? 97 billion. Nobody talks about that. But if there's some loss that public transport is making, that is highlighted and splashed and made a scapegoat for all the problems. Now, let's take the railway issue. The railway right now, the cost of traveling by train is about 1/4 or sometimes even 1/5 of the cost of a bus transport. So if the railway was able to charge the market rate, this issue that Mr. Kirubakaran is raising will disappear virtually. Okay, but having said that, no, passenger railways across the world don't generally make profit. Their benefit is in terms of reducing fuel and congestion and things like that, what we call external benefits. And that's why many governments will still subsidize a railway, because they win in the long term. So the financial issue is separate, and pricing is the answer to that. Railways must have very high economic advantages where even a subsidy is justified in most countries.
Thank you,
Professor, can I ask one question related to that? Earlier we had the class system, that is first, second, third class, and that also brought in additional revenue. Plus also maybe the normal people were able to travel who were coming to office, and maybe other government servants and others. What do you think of that system coming back?
Well, we still have that. In commuter services, it's difficult to have class systems. Most countries don't have for commuter, but all long distance trains have first, second, and third class.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Professor, I think you have mentioned that you would like to answer this question live. This question is about, I think, the fuel subsidies. You have mentioned that rich takes the benefit of fuel subsidies, and this person is asking why cannot at this juncture we can do discriminating prices, that is to charge higher prices for fuel on vehicles on the basis of higher capacity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how we can do that. Okay, your vehicle is larger, it's 500 rupees. No, I think we must be smart about our pricing. If you want to charge a heavy vehicle, charge a larger annual revenue license, or an importation duty, as it is. Don't issue concessionary vehicle permits for large vehicles. I would say issue them, if you want to issue them, for electric vehicles or small vehicles. So these concessionary permits have created a market for very high-end vehicles, status-driven, and so on. And we are actually going away from fuel economy vehicles. We are going in the other direction. So, in fact, somebody wrote to me the other day and say, why don't we ban these vehicles over, to 3,000 cc's until this crisis is over? Or let them pay a fee of 25,000 rupees a month. And many of the people who own such vehicles have smaller vehicles as well. Right. So I think some restrictions on vehicles coming out, number of passengers they carry, and even the for large vehicles, I think is necessary to create a sense of community spirit, in the country. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. Now, Mr. Susanta, now being a former MD of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, I think you can answer this question. The person is asking, when CPC is having fuel storage tanks in large numbers, why should they pay, or why should they charge consumers based on the import cost? Why can't they store and then charge petroleum products based on the average cost?
Thank you, Richard. Actually, the import cost and the fuel storage, yes, I think is trying to relate these two. Yeah, it is true that we have the huge number of fuel storage tanks in various places. But in actual fact, when you look at it, when we really do a proper storaging, so we may have only 10 days storage actually with using this, because we are consuming so much at the moment. So as Professor very rightly said, our consumption have gone up. But to answer the import cost every time, the increasing import cost every time is not the right way to do. In fact, that is why we have to come to a the price formula like other countries, they don't change it every day, but there are countries change every day, and people go to fuel station to another to get 1 or 2 cents cheaper. But we must have a system of introducing this pricing formula properly, and also need to, for everyone to be able to understand. Once we introduce a pricing formula, nobody was able to understand it. But if we implemented proper pricing formula and taking the cost into account, and I think the pricing formula will work. But I think, in my personal view, the price changes should take place monthly or something like that. But certainly, if we really economize the fuel storage, then we can get the cost benefit out of the storage, timely ordering, timely storing, so that you will not go into full shortages, and for the CPC to order on spot buying and things like that. So it's all management. It's all management, actually. So the CPC management has to take care of it. And certainly there can be a cost benefit to be given to the consumer.
Yeah. So Susanta, now are you saying that the price formula, that currently we have a price formula for CPC products that we implement once a month? So are you suggesting something like that to be continued in the future as well?
Yeah, that's right. Now, there is a point that this particular question are asking, because the fuel is brought 2 months ago. Yeah, that is true. So why should we change the pricing for that fuel today? But of course, it is a kind of a cycle.
Yeah,
it is a kind of a cycle. So, so we should not think bad way on that side. But the pricing formula need to be revised. I think for the time being, it need to be taken into account monthly. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Susanta. Mr. PSN, now this question is for you. This person is asking, what would be the average investment to increase the capacity of the refinery?
Thank you. I think, as you can remember, there was a proposal from Iran in 2008, right? At that time, the estimated cost was originally, it was 1,040 million US dollars. 1,040 million US dollars. But unfortunately, when it comes to here, as in the other case, I'm telling now, as in the other cases, it went up to 1,520. Right? That is the main reason it was not materialized. Right? Even if you do the same thing, same modernization, same capacity increase today, this in dollar terms, not in rupees, no. This dollar terms, if you really work hard, you can even today do this same expansion, double the capacity within the range of $1,000 to $1,500 million.
$1,500 million right now.
Right now.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Not 3,000, no 3,500. Right.
Okay. Right. So Susanta, this question I think I can ask from you. This question is about IOC. This person is asking, why are they increasing the prices? Now they're saying, okay, they can understand the price increases by CPC. Why should IOC increase the prices at the same time? And why there is a fuel shortage at IOC?
Actually, Ruchira, they are only importing fuel, only the profit-making products. Now, say, for example, they don't import kerosene and distribute. The kerosene is subsidized. And so like that, so they are at advantage of having the profit-making, but they are also losing money on diesel because the price is going up and up and up, something like that. Now it is going on upward. On the other side, their overhead is less. So actually, they make profit because of their overhead is less. But then, if CPC increase or if IOC increase, vice versa, we have to, balance the pricing. Otherwise, there will be a huge price differentiation from this both organization. So as a policy, I think we have to manage in such a way. I think that's the very reasons they either CPC or IOC, when they wanted to increase the price, then the other price also been met. I think we saw it. Of course, the CPC was not increasing prices for some time, but IOC said they wanted to increase. They don't want to stay in losses. And I want to add one small point to what Mr. Pearsena said regarding the refinery. And we both had a very nice time on evaluating this proposal. And the payback period, even if we invest in this refinery today, whatever the price that Mr. Pearsena was mentioning, it can really recover within 4 years. And it's a huge benefit if we really run. And if we can increase up to 100,000 barrels a day, we don't need to import any clean oil. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Professor, there are two questions which I think I can ask from you. Now, one question is about privatization of SLTB and SLR. And the second question is about LRT project. Do you think that we can restart the LRT project?
Okay, let me take the privatization issue. Actually, the CTB was privatized once and had to be renationalized because they just fell apart. Also, we have a private sector bus operation, and that is, by many opinions, worse than the state sector. Okay, so privatization is not the panacea for problems, all problems. There are many countries where the private sector successfully delivers public transport, as state sector also delivers. The most important aspect here that determines success is actually regulation. Do you have the right regulation? Now, Sri Lanka has very poor regulation for bus sector, which has created competition, which has created the inability to modernize. This is one that needs to be changed. And, as the chairman of the National Transport Commission, that's what I set out to do. But I never was able to stay for a period of time, not more than 2 years, I think, because reform, there's no commitment to reform. Finally, it is your vision, and you end up fighting the ministers and even above, because they don't have the vision for reform, and that cannot happen. Reform must come top down. So what I think is that what we need is actually better reform, and in fact we have proposed something called the Sahasrara Bus Modernization and Reform Program, where buses will be paid on a per kilometer basis, so that whether it's a CTB bus or a private bus, you provide a certain quality kilometer, you get paid. And then the state takes, or the regulator takes the money and pays it to the kilometerage supply. So that's the way in which we can actually improve almost overnight the quality of the service. Now, regarding the LRT project, I think a lot of people think that, because this came on a soft loan with payback, that it's free. Actually, it's almost $3,000 for 16 kilometers. Now, the Southern Highway, 126 kilometers to Godagama, that is Matara, cost us $892 million. So we are thinking of spending 3 times that for 16 kilometers of LRT. Okay, and if you actually look at this cost and compare it internationally, just like in the case of the refinery, these are huge outliers. We need to ask, can we ever recover that investment? Even if it is 0% loan, 20 years payback, we still have to pay it back. So these are questions that many of us had. And also, when you think of an investment, we must always think of alternative projects. So when we compare improving or electrifying railway, when we are putting a BRT, the return is much, much higher. So if Japan wishes to help our transport sector, I think there are a lot, either the cost must come down, or there are many other transport sector, maybe rail sector projects that will have a much higher rate of return, you know. So I think this is where we need to talk. We talk to Japan and so on, say, you know, okay, we have a problem. You know, can you help us get better money for the yens or the dollar that we get? You know, LRT also I need to add now that money is for one corridor in Sri Lanka, or in Colombo, okay, which carries like less than, you know, 2% of people in this traveling in this province. There are 8 such corridors, right? Recently, Jaipur did a LRT like that, and they are now having all kinds of problems because LRT, you need to have a network. So if you build 4, 5, 6 networks like that, what is the cost? You know, so a lot of people talk about this as if, you know, it comes cheap, it's a grant and so on. Why don't we be? And I think we need to, and, you know, institutions like you must throw out the costing, you know, will people be able to actually pay back the cost? You know, subsidizing a rural bus may be okay, but why should you subsidize a high-end LRT? You know, so these are issues that have never entered the public space, and some of us who have raised this have been even, you know, criticized for raising these, and that, okay, you know, anything we get is good, let's build it, you know. And I think right now we are paying for such, you know, mentality, particularly with the highways. We have built and built and built and taken loans, and we are basically having problems. Okay, I think I have answered both questions.
Thank you, Professor. I would like to end the Q&A session with this question. I would put this question for all our panelists. This question is basically about how we can do an effective communication strategy to shift the people from the comfortable private vehicles to public transport. Professor, you can go ahead. You can start.
Okay, I mean, I think the best is by example. As long as, you know, those in high positions in society hang on to their SUVs and V8s and BMWs and walk around, why should anybody else do, you know? So that's why, as I mentioned, government must take a lead, and ministries must take a lead, and professionals must take a lead. And, you know, professionals must be seen. There was a comment saying, you know, I mean, are we prepared to go in public transport? I mean, that's the challenge. And I think, as somebody else has put in the chat, aren't we responsible? Yes, we are responsible, because it has been convenient. We have had the money to pay for it, and, you know, we have gone, and knowing sometimes that the country really cannot afford it. So rather than a communication strategy in the business sense, I think the communication has to be more in terms of, you know, leading by example. Of course, you know, others will have its place, but whatever you do in terms of media, I think, you know, what you can take in terms of, let's say, transformational leadership. You know, we need leadership of that kind now, from politics to institution to administration and so on. So I think it's time for us, you know, however painful, to, you know, try and show that. I think that's the best communication strategy, in my opinion.
Thank you, Professor. Mr. Sushant, you can go ahead now.
Yeah, I can add something to this. Of course, I'm trying to say from the organizational perspective, there's a huge responsibility on this public transportation sector, like CTB, railway, and the private sector as well. And I think this facility, what is available with us, I'm not talking about the new facilities. We must be able to, I mean, that's again end up in management. Like, say, for example, even this public transportation system, if it runs well on the road, timely, and even the railway, you know, if that is the responsibility of the organization. I'm not saying government, because that organization has a human structure, the management structure. If they really plan and do it well, So that's a communication strategy that they should use. And if it is available on the road, I don't think the people will bother about bringing their personal cars into the town. Now, say, for example, if you take London or for that matter, any other towns in the world, people don't go by their cars. They go and the infrastructure, like say every railway station have the parking space. They come to the railway station, put the car there and then take the train and go into the wherever they wanted to go. So I'm not saying new investment, but whatever we have, if we manage properly, then we will be able to, increase the utilization of the public transportation. Now, one small point for that, say, for example, the fuel. We have a crisis today. And I suggested few months ago, the CTB and the private sector buses have a strategy to distribute fuel for them so that they won't stay in the queues to get the fuel. We have storage facilities in every CTB depot. So the CPC or the LISO can give the fuel to those depots and then issue the fuel from there. I have said this to the various high authorities in the CPC, but I cannot see it happening. So that the buses giving in the public sector, I mean the fuel station can be reduced. And then if the buses are running on time, people will not go into the queues. They will use the public transportation and go to their work. I think strategically, we all have, as Professor said, we are responsible. We all have to act, especially taking the lead from those organizations. They have to well manage. I think the answer is there.
Thank you, Mr. Sandhu, for your views. Mr. Piasena?
I also have to say the same things. Actually, public transportation must be improved very well. Otherwise, just wastage of petroleum products by using the private transport, especially. I think Professor Kumarage would have plans. Why can't we, restrict three-wheelers or two-wheelers, at least two-wheelers or three-wheelers to main roads like Candy Road, Gold Road, or like that main road, restricting that vehicle coming to those roads and provide very good public transport system. If it is happening, the congestion in roads also will reduce, right? But only thing, there should be a very good schedule, timetable for coordinated timetable for both public CTB and private bus services. Otherwise, present days what's happening, it's there's no coordination, there's a competition only, right? Then it leads to various accident also. So if there is a proper timetable, I don't know why they can't at least make a good time CTB and private buses. So if you have that systems, I think most of the people will go by public transport. No need to go by their own vehicles, right? That's what I want to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piasena. So once again, thank you very much for all our presenters.
I just want to leave one suggestion, please.
Yes,
I won't take more than 1 minute on that. Actually, this is something that I learned when I visited Iran. Recently you may have heard by the minister announcing that we have to register all these vehicles to, do away with the queuing and all that. But I did the suggestion even to the petroleum secretary. I have this particular card. This is a fuel card, which is available. This technology is available in Sri Lanka. Both the mobile providers, the major ones. But I proposed this one in 2013 in CPC to introduce. What we need is simply issue this card to every vehicle owner instead of registering them in the fuel station, and give them, say, for example, I suggested this way to the secretary that, okay, for cars, ordinary cars, we can say, we will give you only 100 liters for a month. And it will repeat like a mobile, you know, every month it adds 100 liters, but you have to pay and take it. And motorcycle, we will say, we will give you only 50 liters. Three-wheelers, because they are doing hirings and this and that, we can give them 200 liters. Buses, we can say, we will give you only 400 or 500 liters. And then we can limit the consumption of each and every, then the people will understand they will get only a quota. So they will start thinking about their own fuel economy. And this need to be implemented. And also, today, all the fuel keeps, there is a big mafia happening, especially three-wheelers. What they do is they fill up their tanks 3-4 times every day, and then they take the fuel out from the three-wheeler and sell it at 1,000 rupees a liter. Now, because of these things, and people have started doing many things, they are, instead of running three-wheelers, they are now selling fuel. So if we issue a card, now in this is for my car, I am using this card, and there my car number is registered. So if we really, and the normal push machine can operate this, so there won't be any investment. I am just leaving this thought and suggestions to the people who are listening. If the government authorities are listening, I have already now told the secretary to how to do it, not to register just names and the vehicle numbers in the petrol station, but have a system controlled by digital technology so that this can be implemented. Thank you very much for the time given to me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sudhanta. Thank you, Sudhanta, for that suggestion. And also thank you for the presenters who have also answered many questions that were there. Now, Professor Vattabala, I would like to hand it over to you to give the closing remarks and to make the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Ruchira. I think you have done an excellent job. I think the most important thing is the time, because this sort of topic, I think it can go on for days and days, because we have so many areas to discuss. But today, the main important areas are brought up. So I must especially thank our senior professor Amal Kumar. He done quite a lot of work on this matter, because I remember once I invited him for a seminar. He was in Bangladesh doing some work, but he certainly obliged and he came in. So in fact, if you look at the Daily Mirror, today they are having big problems of printing paper. In that paper, they published it in 2 pages. One is, of course, for the general public, where it was given in full description, and other one for the business people in the business page. Because sometimes our business people don't read other pages. They may read only the business page, but that was also covered. Now, coming on to this, I think Ms. Susanta mentioned that whether there are any government authorities coming here, but I don't think that they have ears or eyes, You see, I think if you ask Senior Professor Amal Kumar, he made so many recommendations. Has any of those been taken into account? Now, today you were speaking of quota. Now, quota, today we have to go into quota. No, not only fuel, the food items, everything that we are having, we have to go into quota. Now, even the education, it's the same thing, So we have to work out a system, and I think we have the people who are there, the professionals. If you look at the IT industry, if you look at the universities, they will be able to give this. Not only give it, but also train the people to carry this out. Now, that is the biggest problem that we have. But I think today we are only hearing the ministers speaking. I think the secretaries and the government ministries have to be made responsible. Today, I don't see any of them coming forward and telling Senior Professor Amal Kumar, please give your suggestion. We will put it down. We will put it to cabinet and get it approved. Have they done that? No, those are the targets that we given to them. You see, the secretaries are the most important people who have to implement all these things. But if they are not involved, if the minister comes and says, do this, do that, that is not professional management, You see, they can make a policy, but the implementation has to be done properly. And also you need to have the right people, you need to have the proper skills, all those are involved. So today's topic has shown all those things. Now, one of the things that I just want to mention now, Senior Professor Amal Kumar mentioned about the concessionary permits that are given. Now, you see, those days, when a member of parliament enters, is elected, the first day when they come, you know what they get? They get a season ticket. They get a season ticket to use the railway or the bus service. Today, what they are getting? They are getting a car permit. So, I think we are all going in the wrong direction. You know, when they are being elected, they ask people. Now, people are rising against them. You know, now we have to be sensible. The people have to look into this. I am telling that the public servants have to be more active. We have to make them responsible. We will make the suggestions to them. They must implement it.
Exactly.
We can't go through ministries, you know, has any of these important points discussed in parliament? No, no. You see, everyone is talking, no, you see, even I can tell you when the president goes out to various villages, he is scolding everyone, you know, because these people are not doing the job of work, no. And actually, they can't do it because the ARs and FRs are there. But then they must find a way how they can implement this for the benefit of the people. So society is the most important thing. Our CMA Sri Lanka, we have now come to this fact of societal cost. The cost benefit, the societal cost is very important. Now, whatever all you spoke, even of the refinery, of the petroleum distribution, then the entire the keynote speech that was made, all these are connected, and I'm sure that there are a lot of good to be that will come. I only hope that they will listen to it.
Exactly.
But we have to make them responsible. Now that is not happening. We have to make all these ministries responsible: the petroleum ministry, the transport ministry, agricultural ministry, trade ministry, everyone who is earning the foreign exchange for this country. If the trade ministry is in charge of the export development board and others, they must be responsible. They should give all facilities to the investors. Maybe the diesel that they require, the petrol that they require, let them manufacture those and export it. So I think we need to have more of these webinars. We need to now also discuss with the respective ministries. They must come and they need to take our ideas. They need to go ahead, you know, because if they are functioning properly, I don't think we should have had any problem. Then look at the finance ministry. How did they manage our finances? Do they know what the cost of a product is? Do they know the repayment? Now, all these are laid down. You see, if you read the central bank report, I was reading the Institute of Policy Studies, they are putting out very excellent reports. No one looks at those. I think Senior Professor Amal Kumar said that he's made so many representations. But what is happening? They are not even looking at that. They are looking only to see how they can get the vote. You know, this vote has taken us, is really the degradation of our society. Our whole country has been that, you know, we can't now go on this vote basis. We have to do something good for the country. The people need to realize that. So I think today you all have explained this. So let me thank all our the three panelists, the keynote speaker, Senior Professor Amal Kumarge, because I know that as soon as I spoke to him, he said, certainly I will do this, but I know that he's having a lot of demand, but he still was able to make his time available. So definitely, I think when we started our total cost management project, I think I invited Senior Professor Amal Kumarge for that. That was maybe some time back, but that is what we need. Total cost management has to come into effect. Then also Mr. Susanta, he's our own member. I'm very happy, Susanta, that you were able to come. We need to have, I think what you were telling is not sufficient for what we have discussed today, but certainly we will try to see how we can make the best use of it. And of course, Mr. Piyasena Ekanayak telling about the refinery, because we have heard these also on the TV, various people, trade unions telling about these things, but then the management should come forward, because sometimes they are scared, you know, they think that the ministers will transfer them, but that cannot, that is something that we need to get rid of. Otherwise, we will not be able to make this country. Now we have come to a stage, we have gone to the bottom. I think still we are going down, down, down. I don't think we have any light. Next few days, there is no foreign exchange, there won't be fuel, there'll be larger queues. So, but if they do not have a system, use the digitalization that was mentioned, the card that you mentioned, all these are very important. So let me thank all of you all and also all our participants who have been there. despite the very many problems of the power cut and all these other things that they have been present with us. So let me thank all of you and wish you all a good night. And let's keep in touch and see how we can take this forward and make the government aware. When we say government, it's not only the ministers, but also the government departments. So let us send that to the secretaries concerned and let them also have a look at it and open their eyes. So thank you very much and all the very best.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Amal. Thank you, Susanta. Thank you, Mr. Piesena. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thanks,
Good night.
Ruchira. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Okay.
Professor.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, we will finish off now. We'll keep in touch anyway. Okay.